Call on Government Order of the Day number 2.
Student Loan Scheme Amendment Bill number 3, third reading.
Speaker.
The Honourable Todd McLeay.
Mr Speaker, I move that the Student Loan Scheme Amendment Bill number 3 be now read a third time. Mr Speaker, this bill continues the Government's efforts to ensure proper governance over the student loan scheme by proposing tougher measures to deal with persistent non-payers and raising the repayment obligation of overseas-based borrowers. While the overwhelming majority of borrowers accept the responsibility to repay their taxpayer-funded loan, the reality is that some do not, despite having the financial ability to do so. The main provision in the bill will allow Inland Revenue to seek an arrest warrant to deal with this small group of mainly overseas-based borrowers. As I previously made clear, Mr Speaker, this action would be taken only in the most serious of cases when the borrower clearly has the financial ability to pay and when all other efforts to persuade that person to make their repayments to the New Zealand taxpayer have failed. The second major proposal in this bill raises the repayment obligation for overseas-based borrowers to bring them more into line with their New Zealand-based counterparts. Overseas borrowers with a loan balance over $45,000 will now have their repayment rates increased. This will speed up the repayment rates for these borrowers and reduce the amount of interest that they have to pay on their loans. These are the principal features of the bill, Mr Speaker. I want to acknowledge the work of those who have contributed to the successful passage of this bill so far. In particular, my thanks go to the policy officials and drafters who have worked on the detail of this bill. I want to recognise members of the public and representative groups who have made submissions on the proposed legislation and have come before the committee. Mr Speaker, the Finance and Expenditure Committee, for its recommendations to improving the transparency and cohesiveness of the student loan scheme. And finally, Mr Speaker, I want to thank all those who will vote in favour of this bill, because what this does is sends a very clear message to those who have been afforded a very good education because the taxpayer has decided to provide them with loans, interest-free in New Zealand, with interest when they go overseas, that they do have an obligation to the hard-working New Zealander, the New Zealand taxpayer up and down this country who have made this possible. Finally, Mr Speaker, I must thank members of the House for recognising the importance of these measures and ensuring that student loan scheme is managed efficiently and fairly. Mr Speaker, the student loan scheme and the student loan debt book is in better shape than it has been, certainly a better shape than when those opposite left the government benches, and much, much better than when one day in the future they come back and ruin it again. Thank you.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Dr David Clark.
Well, Mr Speaker, that is a poor excuse for a third reading speech from the